What is going on, everyone, and welcome to the Sports Talk on Tap podcast. We're here. It's mainly a Minnesota, sports lifestyle podcast as a fan of the Vikings, Timberwolves, Wild, and Twins. But it's going to be also everything covered sports that's going on. And then today we have a couple topics such as the NBA Finals recap so far of the first two games with Game 2 just concluding yesterday, and then a couple NFL headlines as we head into mandatory mini camps this week. So it's an exciting time. Obviously the NHL finals going on as well, NBA finals, but kind of we're going to be entering NFL season shortly, and that mandatory mini camp is just a sign of that. But first, before we go into the NFL topics today, I want to talk about the NBA and the first two games between the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Indiana Pacers. First of all, the last podcast we did, I thought maybe the Timberwolves could come back after they made it 2-1, blowing Oklahoma City out by 42, but then Oklahoma City just showed why they were the better team and ultimately ending the Timberwolves season 5 games, winning that tough Game 4 in an offensive shootout, and then Game 5 just blowing the doors out of Minnesota. So it was unfortunate for me, but it was a huge credit to Oklahoma City because they were just the better team, and I kind of feared that, but as a fan, you always try and keep a little bit of optimism. But I think Oklahoma City, despite it being 1-1, has also showed why they're the better team through the first two games. And huge credit to Indiana. They did against the Knicks in Game 1, where they stole that game. They were able to do it against Oklahoma City. And then even going back against the Bucks series in that Game 5 closeout, coming back, they were down like 9 points with like a minute left. And they just find ways to win those games. And that was a huge credit in Game 1. But I think with that being said, I think through the first two games, and even though I know Oklahoma City is at home and there's a big advantage there, they just look like the more complete team. Indiana, like I said, in Game 1 had that crazy comeback win. They were down by like 15 with 9 minutes to go in the fourth, and they're able to rally. And that's a big part about resilience. And, that could play a factor in them winning it all. But I think overall, just star power, best player for best player. SGA averaged 39 in Game 1 or 38 points, something like that, and then 34 yesterday. Super efficient, and he was able to get his other teammates going with 8 assists, especially Chet Holmgren in the first quarter, and then bench players like Alex Caruso, who's been so good for them. What a signing or trade, but then extension signing him, basically giving up nothing to go to the Bulls. I know Josh Giddey played okay for them, but getting Alex Caruso play for his caliber on defense that can just wear down a team's best offensive player. And when he produces offense like that, hitting 4 threes, it's game over. And Aaron Wiggins also dropping 18 points. He's arguably been their best bench scorer this postseason, but all season. And, he showed that yesterday as well, contributing there. And Chet obviously going early to help them get out to that early lead. It's just a testament to just how deep OKC is when you can run out 10 different players that are all capable starting an NBA team. And Indiana, unfortunately, didn't get the same response from their star, Tyrese Halliburton, who had that crazy game winner in Game 1. He's been insanely clutch when it matters, and it's still 1-1. But, only, I believe, like 14 points there, 17 points yesterday, but I think 12 of those were in the fourth quarter when the game was kind of out of reach and just kind of, trying to claw back. And the points are points, but I think a big goal for Indiana in Game 3 is going to have to be to get him going early, and he's going to have to take control. We know his best part of his game is playmaking, but unfortunately, that's not the end-all be-all. You have to be able to contribute at the beginning, scoring, and set a tone. And I know Oklahoma City's defense makes that tough in the paint. They've made Anthony Edwards struggle, Jamal Murray at points, even Nikola Jokic when they're putting Caruso on him. It's tough to score against this team. They're arguably one of the best defenses we've seen the last 25 years, but you still got to find a way and just at least try and be dominant, go out shooting. So I think that'll be a big goal for Tyrese, and maybe that home energy will help feed into it. But with that being said, Oklahoma City, just the consistency that SGA is able to bring is unreal throughout the regular season, winning the MVP. And, the free throw line stuff can be a little bit annoying, but that's not really, all his game. He would still lead the league in NBA scoring without free throws. So it goes to show how all-around players, especially that lethal mid-range shot, improved three-point game. He's just been great in being able to attack and get to his spots, I think, is what makes him arguably the best player in the world right now. Right there with Nikola Jokic, obviously. Those two went at it in a historic MVP race. But he set the tone. Like 76 points through the first two NBA Finals games, which I believe is the most ever, next to Allen Iverson. I saw our stat with that. SGA, what he's been able to do in the first deep playoff run, Western Conference Finals, NBA Finals, still, not showing, any fatigue and just putting up the consistent numbers, and then just getting the bounce back from their players. Chet Holmgren didn't have, a great first game, came out firing in game two. Ended the game with only 15 points, but that early dominance is what they needed to, hold on to the game, especially in that first quarter. Went second quarter, Alex Caruso and Eric Wiggins and SJ were all getting going. Helped set the tone. And then Jalen Williams contributing 19, not the most efficient, but still I like the shots he's taken. They're going to start falling eventually, and just kind of, still having a better performance than in game one where he was even worse efficiency wise. So huge credit to Oklahoma City. But with that being said, I'm very intrigued what happens in these games 3 and 4, because at the end of the day, no matter how much better Oklahoma City is, look maybe like 75-25, it's 1-1, and we're heading back to Indiana, and Indiana could easily, win at least one at home, if not two, feeding off their home crowd. So it'll be interesting to see how game 3 they respond, what kind of adjustments the Pacer make, because you have Miles Turner being able to stretch the floor, which is good, but all these 3-pointers aren't going to go down like in game 1 where they shot like 47% on high volume. Those corner threes, if you get good looks, they can consistently fall at a decent rate, but not, game 1 was kind of an outlier. So it'll be interesting to see how aggressive they make, any lineup changes, who plays more minutes, who plays less minutes. But overall, first 2 games have been very interesting. And credit to Indiana, they hung in there for a majority of game 2. They were able to get down to like close to 10, like 12 points. So they never go away, but Oklahoma City just kind of always had a response, like in game 1 when they didn't, when they went up by 15, just kind of couldn't buy shots. And that's a credit to Indiana. But at the same time, Oklahoma City just looks, in my opinion, like the better team. And I think the team that will win this series in probably 6 games. But, Indiana, their goal is probably to split at least both at home. 2-2 going back to Oklahoma City. They still deserve a ton of credit for how far they've gone. And Rick Carlisle, I think, is a top 3 coach in the NBA right now. So kind of what adjustments can he make? Like I said, Tyrese, I think, will be the biggest factor in getting him going, and showing that superstar scoring ability he showed, like in that Knicks series, that game 4, where he had like 35 points, was knocking down 3-pointers and just getting into the lane in the space, and creating his own shot, because that's what he's going to need to do. Even though he's a great playmaker, he's going to have to get going. But with that being said, still 1-1, should be exciting to see what adjustments happen game 3. But overall, can't complain. So far, it's been a good NBA Finals, even with 2 smaller market teams, with Indiana and Oklahoma City. But Oklahoma City, I mean, just a historic regular season they had, and then leading it into the playoffs with dominance against the Memphis Grizzlies that were a solid 8 seed, even with Ja injured at time, dominating the Timberwolves, and taking the Nuggets in a historic Nikola Jokic season, and beating them too. So overall, just great stuff from the Thunder. But Indiana still 1-1, have a lot of hope going back to the home crowd. Excited to see what adjustments they make. But with that being said, now get into the second topic of the day, where the Packers this morning released Jair Alexander. And Jair Alexander, obviously has drafted by the Packers, I believe like 6 years ago, maybe off by a number. So, but he was great with the Packers, made 2 first-team All-Pros. Arguably his best moment was back in 2022 when he locked up Jefferson for only 1 catch, 15 yards that game. So he's shown ability to be one of the best corners in the league, and just a couple of years ago was regarded as a top 3 corner, in the game, right there with Jalen Ramsey. But unfortunately, the last couple of years, he's been more injury prone. He's kind of had, some trouble, personality-wise. Not like maybe sort of like a diva, kind of walking out with the captains during game, when he wasn't a captain for the coin toss, being suspended with the team, for that act. It's interesting to see, kind of from the Packers side. I understand why you have to move on, just because couldn't agree to a contract extension. He's kind of, given some drama, so maybe it'll help out the locker room, but also leaves a major hole in their quarterback room. Kind of what do they do now, at the quarterback 1 spot? They've kind of managed without him over the last 2 years. He's only played 14 games, so not even half the games during the regular season. I think like close to like only 7 each year, just dealing with different injuries. So I'm curious if the Packers, try and sign someone, or do they just believe in their depth in the quarterback room? Will be interesting to see. But as a Vikings fan, I can say I'm happy, because even though, he hasn't played a lot, when he is out there, he still, can show a lot of potential. I remember in the Dallas wildcard game, come back from injury, getting a pick, immediately making an impact that in that game to help the Packers run away with that. So he still shows a lot of great signs, and would also be interesting, to see if the Vikings could pick him up. As a Vikings fan, I know him and Jefferson have their battles going at it, but I think it's all out of competitiveness there. And I think if they should be able to, be in the same locker room without any problems, hopefully, because they both have the same goal, to win a championship, which should be the number one goal, especially as a Vikings fan. That's all I want to see coming off this 14-win season, and kind of one of the last spots in the depth chart where I'm a little bit concerned about the Vikings. I know they Byron Murphy Jr., who's amazing, or had an amazing year, and he'll be, solid. They signed Isaiah Rodgers, a nice depth from Philly, but just getting that next guy in there with, the uncertainty, can Isaiah Rodgers play a full season in a full starting role where he's been kind of more so a role player, especially with the Eagles last year. And then, for the Vikings, it'd just be a great piece to add, and kind of one of the last, check marks I can count on my list to believing in this team. Obviously, with the big question mark quarterback for JJ McCarthy, because it will all come down to the QB. How does he perform basically entering his rookie season? So I'm excited to see how he looks at OTAs. But with that being said, I think for the Packers, it was probably the right move, because you don't want to sign him. I don't know what kind of deal he's looking for, and that goes the same thing with the Vikings. Even if he wants to come here, or any team that wants his talents, because he still can provide extremely good amount of value. Surprisingly, still only 28 years old, even though he's been in the league for quite a while, or it felt like that at least. How time flies, but you don't want to sign to a multi-year deal. If I were the Vikings, I'd give him like a 1-year deal, just kind of prove it. And I think he needs to do that too, to prove that he can not only just play at a high level, but stay healthy, because that's arguably the best ability is availability, and he hasn't been able to provide that over the last couple of years. So it'll be interesting to see, what team signs him. But that was kind of a big release this morning by Brian Gutekunst, the GM for the Green Bay Packers. So it'll be interesting to see kind of where does he decide to go and how quickly, he stays on the market. And then the other big news was over the weekend, Pittsburgh Steelers signing Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers was just kind of, doing Aaron Rodgers offseason, kind of waiting it out. For a while, it did seem like he wanted to go to the Vikings. It was kind of interesting to see when he waited out, but the Vikings were clear they wanted to go JJ McCarthy. I think the Steelers were the best option for him to go to anyways. I think having DK Metcalf there, a winning head coach in Mike Tomlin that's not going to put up with any of his nonsense, I think will be a great fit. They still have a great defense. TJ Watt is still looking for that contract extension, but, he'll be right there. Cameron Hayward, still a beast even though he's getting up there in age. It's still just a great defense with Minka Fitzpatrick. I think Aaron Rodgers, this will be a good redemption tour, because obviously the way things end in Green Bay, or just before they were ending in Green Bay, winning his 2 MVPs, playing arguably the best football in his late 30s. Then the last year, they missed the playoffs on the last day of the regular season. Shout the Detroit Lions for taking care of business with them there. And then he goes to the Jets, gets injured year 1. They run it back. They have these sky-high expectations this year. A lot of the media, and it wasn't even just the New York hype. A lot of the media believed in the Jets entering the season, and then they won 5 games. Super disappointing. They still trade for Devontae Adams. And there was just a bunch of, coaching decisions, GM decisions, coach fired after 5 games with Robert Saleh. It was just kind of a whole mess of, is it Rodgers doing it? Is he pulling the strings? And just people questioning his leadership. Like, is he even the guy? And then it made it clear when Aaron Glenn got hired, he was not bringing back. So if I'm Aaron Rodgers, I should feel disrespected. I should feel more motivated than ever to prove I can still play high level football, because this is arguably the last year he'll be able to get a full chance to be the starter. Obviously in Pittsburgh, no one's going to really challenge them. They didn't bring Russell Wilson back. It's still just Mason Rudolph, and Mason Rudolph is not a starter. And Rodgers surprisingly had good statistics last year, even though they weren't winning football games. His interception ratio was a little bit higher than, his historic low interception ratio. But, I mean, that's to be expected when you're getting older and kind of you're taking some more risk. But he was still playing a little bit more careless than obviously the Rodgers we're used to seeing, and maybe that was due to the injury. Maybe it's just the old age. He's, washed, as they say. But it'll be interesting to see how he fits with DK Metcalf. You still got Pat Freiermuth, decent offensive line. And then the running game situation, Jalen Warren, Najee Harris left in free agency. So it'll be interesting to see, how can the Steelers respond after 14 weeks last year. They were 10-3. They looked like a prime Super Bowl team. Honestly, in my opinion, I kind of bought into the hype a little bit. People were calling Mike Tomlin the coach of the year. Then the last 4 games, they play some real teams like the Eagles and Chiefs on Christmas, I remember, and it just got ugly. They lost 4 games in a row, including one to the Ravens, and then enter wildcard weekend. They go down like 21-0 early, end up losing like 28-14 with a garbage time touchdown there. So they ended their season really bad, from 10-3 to 10-8 overall. So Aaron Rodgers, it's a sign, I think, in that room that they want to win. Bringing in a guy still, even if he is a little bit washed up, that has played at a super high level for so long. And I think if the team can rally together, I think it'll be a good mix because Mike Tomlin's not going to put up with any of that BS with Aaron Rodgers, because Rodgers will get the boot quickly and Mike Tomlin won't mind starting Mason Rudolph the whole season. So I think that'll be a good match, and just getting DK Metcalf, it'll be a new look to this offense. I'm curious how him and Arthur Smith will collide, because Arthur Smith, his time in Atlanta as the head coach didn't go great, questionable play calling. But one of the roots is Pittsburgh is interesting in training for Kyle Pitts. Obviously had a great rookie season for the Falcons, but it's kind of declined in production, maybe due to some injuries, but also just some drops on himself. So maybe he needs a new start, and he reunites with Arthur Smith and gives, the Steelers another weapon, which would be interesting because he's kind of, a hybrid tight end wide receiver that's been underachieving. Maybe Rodgers can get the most out of him, who knows. But it'll be exciting to see, kind of what Aaron Rodgers, can bring to this team. Obviously in a tough division where the Bengals got one of the best offenses in the league, the Ravens still one of the most complete teams in the game, and the Browns that are looking for a revamp season with their still strong defense, some weapons, but obviously the quarterback situation remains a huge question there. So overall, yeah, that was a big signing, and I was kind of ruined for that. Even as a Vikings fan, I kind of didn't want Aaron Rodgers here. I want to see what JJ McCarthy has. I'm obviously not wasting 1 year with Sam Darnold because of the injury, but because it was still a fun year, great year, one of the best in Vikings history. But you want to be able to take advantage of this rookie scale contract. As reports came out, the Vikings believe they're entering a 3-year Super Bowl window with McCarthy. So I'll come down to kind of seeing how it goes. And I like, no drama in the QB battle. It's going to be McCarthy. And then same for Rodgers, basically guaranteed starter there, assuming, Mason Rudolph doesn't beat him out. But Rodgers, I still think from what I saw last year, the flashes he showed, I remember in the Jacksonville game where he can still sling it. So it'll be interesting to see, what can they do this year as a team. But with that being said, yeah. So a lot of exciting news. I know for me as a Vikings fan, mandatory mini camp starts this week for a lot of teams before we enter that kind of month where teams go off by themselves before training camp starts. But with that being said, yes, a lot of exciting stuff going on with the NBA, NFL. And the last topic I want to quickly touch on has been the NHL playoffs, Stanley Cup Finals, which has been arguably better than the NBA Finals. Man, what 2 games have we had so far? Both games going to OT. Edmonton wins the first one, and then Brad Marchand, Boston Bruins legend, as I'm from Boston, so everyone's kind of rooting for Florida, surprisingly, even though, Boston and Florida have a history of meeting in the playoffs, but Florida's gotten the better than the last 2 years. But then obviously Brad Marchand getting traded to Florida mid-season, people want to see him win a ring, and scoring that game winner in game 2 was unreal. And Florida in Edmonton, I think this is one of the most even Stanley Cup Finals I remember so far. I mean, both teams have great offense, great defense. The goalies have been great at times. Bobrovsky, Stuart Skinner making clutch saves. I think the series deserved to be 1-1. Obviously, when it goes into OT, both times in game 2, double OT, you kind of want the split. And for Florida, you obviously take after losing game 1. You don't want to go down 2-0, even though you're heading back home. And for Edmonton, it's kind of a stinger, but, goal is just to split Florida 2-2, keep control of home ice, which I think will happen because these 2 teams are so evenly matched. I think this is going to be another 7-game series. Obviously not going to be the 7-game series we saw last year where Florida wins the first 3, Edmonton wins the next 3, and then Florida wins game 7. I think we'll see kind of, more Edmonton, maybe Florida, Edmonton, kind of back and forth. But overall, yeah, it's been a great series so far. Curious to see head back to Florida tonight. How does Edmonton respond after a tough, double OT loss? Does Florida have any, emotional hangover? Probably not, because Florida's been here the 3rd straight Stanley Cup Finals. They know how to handle it. And obviously, Brian Marchand being the professional he is, the amount of deep playoff runs he's been on. Overall, though, I just want to quickly bring that up. But a series has been McDavid showing out, Draisaitl. Hopefully, McDavid can get on the score sheet a little bit more because he's been more so that playmaker. But maybe he scores a couple of goals tonight and is able to, help Edmonton take a 2-1 series lead. But it should be interesting. This is a series I really can't sports bet on or give sports betting advice just because it's so even. I honestly don't know. I feel like every game is going to be a coin flip. And it's not just been, one team getting lucky or the other. I think Edmonton was the better team in game one, especially at the end coming back. They were kind of the better team in OT, and they were able to win that. Game two was more back and forth, but Florida showed the resiliency they've had all year and showed the last couple of years, not giving a shot against the Bruins' historic regular season where they're the best team in NHL history, down 3-1, winning 3 straight, making a historic run in the Stanley Cup Finals. And then last year, dominating, making it to the finals, losing 3 straight. It's like, oh my gosh, are we going to blow this? And being able to close it out at home. They've been through it before. But overall, yeah, these two teams, clearly the best two teams left in the bracket. So it's always good to see that because we won't get, a 5-game series is going at least 6, definitely, in my opinion, 7 games, with the winner being a toss-up just because of how even these teams are. But with that being said, I'm hoping to be able to record at least 5 times a week, just covering, different NFL news. Maybe tomorrow we're going to do a little Vikings preview, my expectations, maybe a game-by-game prediction. But yeah, it should be exciting. Thank you all for listening. Make sure to like, subscribe if you enjoy this kind of content. We'll catch you next one. Peace.